So failure is just you learning what not to do next time.
Yeah. That's how I've always looked at it.
Right.
Like, think about the first time you rode a bike. You just get on it and ride it and been like, hey, I'm perfect. No problem. No, you're going to get beat up. It's
Right.
going to happen. You're going to hear the no. It's easy to just get beat down and go, I don't want to send the next email. I just don't want to hear another no. I don't want to put up another social media post because it's only going to get 20 likes.
Right.
No, learn from it. Figure it out.
Welcome back to the Reginald Report. All right. Well, today we got a guest, Justin Perun. And Justin is, well, there's a lot that goes into who you are, okay? And we'll touch on it. But, first and foremost, his company is Nautical Miles, and it's a yacht charter system. So it's here in Naples, and it gives really an amazing experience to someone that wants to be on the water and have an experience either with business or different people. So we're definitely going to be talking about that and how that's unique. But what's cool is having Justin on here. He's got a ton of different experience in the entrepreneur world. He's started up multiple businesses. He sold them. He started multiple businesses and failed at them too, and had to shut them down. And so we're definitely going to be talking about today that if you're one of those people that you failed at a business, you're not alone, and it's a lot more common than you think. So Justin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So where were you born and raised?
Grew up in the Northeast in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And then made my way back down to college down in North Carolina. Nice. And then after that, made my way up to Chicago. Oh. And from there, I spent 17 years roughly. And then after getting married and having a kid, I said, no more Chicago. We don't need the winters anymore.
Yeah.
And we had a place down here, so we came down here full time in 2019.
Love it. Love it. So welcome to paradise, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Well, good. So your last kind of line of work prior to Nautical Mile was payroll, right? Pretty much paychecks and payroll in a sense. It was based around that. But you had some other different businesses. So at what age did you first get introduced to entrepreneurship?
When I was 5, my dad had a business that he started out of our house, right? So that's kind of where it all kind of started, right?
Gotcha.
So weekends were going to different job sites, stuff like that, going to the office. And I just never knew anything different. My mom had her own business as well with her brother. And so it just was part of our family culture, right? And then ultimately, 2008, I was let go from a startup. I was one of the early hires there, and we were growing rapidly in the financial services space.
So back up for a second. So did you go to college for kind of entrepreneurship, or just did you just start working for one, or what?
Yeah, so I went to college to be a professional golfer. So I actually ended up and still am a PGA golf professional. So I have my card with the PGA.
Nice. I'm not going to golf with you then. Just kidding.
Yeah, a little rusty. But,
That's what they all say before they scratch golf. All right, guys? All right? Just so you learn, okay?
And then, but that's what brought me up to Chicago. So I ended up going to school down in North Carolina. I got a business degree, a minor in finance, got my card with the PGA, headed up to Chicago for a 7-month internship, and then that turned into 17 years there.
Right.
Started working for the Crown family in Chicago. Unfortunately, they decided to divest out of a lot of their portfolio. So a lot of different assets they owned just before 2008 happened. So right around 2006, 2007, we shut our doors. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do something a little different. I want to go downtown, kind of live a little bit of the city life. Started with a startup in financial services at the time. And right around the 25th person hired into the business. 3-4 years later, we were over 100 employees, had the top financial companies working using our software. And then one day, the owner came up to me who I owned, and he's like, hey, listen, I think you just need to do something on your own. You got a lot of network, why don't you try something and just go do it. And so in 2008, kind of one of the worst times to start something, I started a business in financial services, and that's kind of just from then on out, never look back.
So you learned a lot from the startup, right? And then you were able to apply that knowledge, So, a lot of times we talk about entrepreneurship and just go out and do it, but there's different ways in a sense to get it done. And sometimes it's learning through apprenticeship, it's through a startup, it's through coach and mentor, whatever, right? So in this case, you were part of startup, and then you're like, well, I helped someone else do it, I might as well do it myself this time.
Yeah, I think what I learned from that was the best advice I could give from that piece, if you're working for someone, is treat it like it's your own business at the end of the day, right? So I was the first guy at the office every single day. Before the owner was there, before any investors came, I was the person there, period. I took that time in my 20s to not look at it as a time to party and have fun. I was there on a mission, really. It was like, okay, I'm going to go network with as many people as possible. I'm going to get to know them. They're going to get to know me. I don't know whether they're in my industry or not in my industry. I could care less. All I care about is we may be able to help each other one day, right? And that's kind of something I think really that skill set and that set a tone very early on that like, I'm the first guy there. I'm going to network. I'm going to do this. And I built a pretty massive network in my 20s where people would come and say, hey, I need access to this, or I need, a relationship here. Who would you recommend? And I kind of became a guy that just, hey, can I recommend an attorney? Can you do this? Sure, no problem. Here's 2 or 3 people. Let's go have lunch, right? But again,
I know how that is, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, but it's not about, hey, it's not about, hey, I know the person. It's the action of doing it for the person too.
It's not, hey, you should call this person. It's, hey, let me do an introduction or let me reach out to them. And, and it's very, very different when you're trying to build a relationship or someone's counting on you to help them build a relationship.
Yeah.
So you created this business, right? How was it? Easy?
No.
Of course not, right?
It was a grind.
You said it was financial services.
It was
right?
in financial services. We started out really trying to market and raise capital for smaller financial institutions, hedge funds, funds of funds at the time, and get them in front of different family offices, high net worth individuals, things of that nature. And so not only was I building the business, I was building the relationships with the investors, building the relationships with the actual fund managers themselves. So there was a lot of moving parts that were going on, right? And then that eventually morphed into relationships that ended up, ultimately, I closed that business down, but because of that business, I got introduced to my former business partner.
Right.
And that's what led me into, the last business that I had that was extremely successful. And had I not started that, I'm pretty convinced I would have never met that person that kind of made that mutual connection. We would have gone in a different direction, right? So firm believer of not easy. You get up every day, you do the grind, you do what you got to do. But you never know who you're going to meet. And so one of the things I've always kind of said to people is take any meeting that you can get. Talk to whoever it is. They might not have nothing to do with your doing today, but you don't know who they're going to touch or who they're going to know. Something strikes and they go, hey, you know what? You need to talk to this person. Or, hey, I think I can help you out with this, right? And most people don't understand the power of what that network can really do because they're too busy out doing other things that don't help them put them in the positions. Right?
And everyone says, oh, you must be, luck, right? They always say, oh, you got lucky. And it's not luck. It's like you don't know what it's going to be, right? But it's not luck. But you're putting in the work. Like you said, you take the meetings with the people, you don't know what's going to turn into, right? Rather than people like, well, you only have a certain amount of time in your days. You should really, vet the people, make sure they're even ready to invest and all these things. It's like, don't get me wrong. There's a time and a place for that, right? And there's, I don't want you to take away time from your family and different things like that. But you also just don't know what you don't know, and it can lead to so many cool stuff. So, and a lot of business opportunities. Now, you talked about the latest business and how kind of that first business you started. There's a few in between, right?
Yeah.
So what is the total? How many businesses, in a sense, have you started?
So this one's probably number 7 or 8 at this point, right?
Okay.
I've had a couple of nonprofits that I started, one in Chicago. Recently started one up here in Naples. My son goes to Seacrest, and we started a dad's group. So not a formal nonprofit, but we work on behalf of the school, getting dads together. So my whole goal and what I've enjoyed is the building, the creation of it, the seeing of like, hey, there's an idea here. Let's get people together. What I've realized is my talent is getting people together that are like-minded, and then let's see where it goes from there, right? And so, yeah, I mean, most of them, I will tell you, have been failures. But you look at failure most people look at failure in a way in which it's negative, right? Okay, I didn't do well. I didn't reach the end goal of selling the business. Okay, again, my dad had a business for 35 years. He sold it for 0, right? Like that, a lot of different factors went into that. Would he have lined himself up for it had the economy Yes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, what I've always taken away from it is look back after the doors were shut, and I said, okay, what can I take away from this that was a positive? What did I do right? What can I now apply to the next thing that I have, right?
So failure is just you learning what not to do next time.
Yeah. That's how I've always looked at it,
right?
Like you cannot, it's like with anything. Think about the first time you rode a bike. You just get on it and ride it and been like, hey, I'm perfect. No problem. No, you skinned your knee. You fell. You hit a curb. These are all things that are going to happen in the business.
You figured out what not to do and how to not tip over to stay up straight.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is the grit, the perseverance to get up again and do it again. You're going to get beat up. It's going to happen. You're going to hear the no's. You're going to hear the, I don't know. You're going to hear the soft, maybe, but if you do this, come back to me in 3 months. I might. They're all different ways to approach. You just have to learn what does that really mean at the end of the day and learn from that experience, apply it to the next meeting, apply it to the next phone call, apply it to the next email. It's easy to just get beat down and go, I don't want to send the next email. I just don't want to hear another no. I don't want to put up another social media post because it's only going to get 20 likes. And look at everybody else who's getting 10, 15, 20,000. You're just going, what am I doing wrong?
Right.
No, learn from it. Figure it out. Right.
And also, too, don't get deterred. Like, you're in your own world. You're creating something for yourself, and everyone's at different stages. And I think people need to realize that, like, just because you're not getting it there, you got to remember that person that's getting the 10,000 likes, or the person that has the business, or the person that, has the fancy car, the whatever, they probably started a lot earlier than you did, right? And so, different people are, in a sense, different parts of the race, right? And it's not a race where you got to compete, but we're human. We are going to compete. We are going to compare ourselves, okay? So, at the end of the day, you are at one point in your life, and you might be tweaking your car so that you can go faster in the future. But right now, you're in the pit lane, fixing something, right? Different analogies, but like, just don't get too hung up on it. Just make sure that you don't let it stop you.
Yeah, I think, listen, I just turned 40. I don't really use social media. You know that from last night, right? Like,
right.
They're like, you have an Instagram? I'm like, no, I don't have an Instagram account. Just call me, text me, right?
Justin, if you didn't know, it's funny. I used to be on Instagram. I used to be on Facebook, and I was like, oh, I was like kind of college. And then on my last line of work, I kind of went dormant for everything, right? Because it was kind of, I had to be careful what I was posting and stuff because of my last line of work. And then I was like, I had to get way back into it once I got into this industry. So it's kind of gone on roller coasters, and it's beautiful and powerful in so many ways, and there is negative. So Don't worry, it can be great, and it can be extremely time consuming.
Yeah, but when you see, unfortunately, when we were chatting and you were saying like, it is too perfect. It doesn't show the raw things that happen, right? So the people that I follow on Instagram personally are entrepreneurs where they're showing me the stuff that they don't want to say. Or, you hear of certain individuals that are coming out and really make a name for themselves. If you watch what they're putting out there, they're not telling you the perfect story. They're telling you the stuff of when they got thrown out of a meeting and they said, don't come back. And a month later, they're sitting back with the CEO pitching them the idea again, right? That's the stuff that you need to be watching and seeing. not the person who's going, rah, rah, it's my first business. Great. I just hit $1 million. And that can happen.
Yeah,
The
it's not that it
likelihood of
can't. It's just
is
very
a lot
rare.
less. Yeah, you're talking like not even diamond in the rough stuff. You're talking like forget. Like, that is so few and far between, but it's pushed in everybody's face.
Right. 100%.
That's the challenge.
Right.
The challenge is you're getting fed something that you think is reality, but in the end of the day, most people are going to fail, and that's okay. But learn from it. Every person that has an entrepreneur that has been successful in some stage of their life has always said, I fell, wanted to stop, but I got back up again.
Yeah.
Did it again.
Consistency. Consistently get back up, right? And put in the work. So let's talk about what it took, like mentally and physically, creating some of these businesses. Like, how long did it take? What did it take emotionally? How was it on you, your family, all that?
Yeah, so it's tough, right? So anytime I go into something, all of a sudden it consumes me, literally. So with Nautical Miles, when I started kind of grasping the idea and going, okay, we're forming this thing, this kind of makes sense. Even in my last business, when we were in payment processing, we were two guys kind of in a garage, so to speak, really, and getting up at 3:30, 4 a.m. in the morning, Monday through Friday, right? Doing the things that needed to get done to get ahead of everybody else, right? So, one of the things that I took away when you watch athletes, very successful athletes, is they get to a certain point where they're at a certain level. What makes them different is they start grabbing time in their day. They start doing things different that the others are not, right? So they start creating that separation where it's just enough, and then they just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, just building blocks. And all of a sudden, for instance, Kobe Bryant's the one who's really been promoting, if you read or see anything about him, he always was, I was the first one in the gym at 4 a.m. Why? Because I want to keep that separation, and it keeps growing and growing, right? So that is an
goes back to like one of our core values within Real Producers is grow 1% every day, right? And it's like 1%. That's not very much. But when you multiply 1% over 365 days in that year, that's a lot.
100%. And the balance to your point in terms of physically and how does that work emotionally when you have various points in your life, right? So like I said, in my 20s, I was single. I did what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, and it didn't matter, right? But that came with a challenge because I didn't come home to somebody who would go, hey, it's okay, we're going to figure this out today. It's a bad day, no problem. Tomorrow's another day. You had to pick yourself up and go, we're going to go do this again tomorrow, right? Versus late in my 30s, and started to have relationships and meet, and I met someone, and then, that kind of changed things as well. But that became a different set of challenge because then you start bringing those things home, and all of a sudden that changes the dynamic of the conversation you're having, right? And that person needs to be 100% supportive. Like if you have somebody in your life who, when you come home and they just understand what's going on, they're just an ear and they can just say, hey, it's okay, we're going to do, that's massive, right? And a lot of people don't understand how important that is, and that needs to be vocalized as the entrepreneur to the person you're with or your family to say, hey, listen, there's going to be days where I'm just off, and I need you to understand that, but I also need you to find ways, and here are ways to help me get out of that funk.
And I think because people don't realize that it's most of the time during that day or however long, right? And once before you get home, you have no one else, right? Like you've been getting beat down all day. You've been getting told no. You've been going to sales appointments, whatever. No. So like once you get home, you do have someone. Yeah, you definitely need them. It's huge.
And that can change the dynamic for a person too. Because if you're getting that in the workplace, you come home and all of a sudden you've got, an individual or you have commitments and it's a heavier weight, right? So you either need to be the person who's going to have that stamina to go, okay, it's not about just what happens, the 8, 9, 10 hours that I'm on the phone and doing emails and all this. It's literally a 24/7 lifestyle, right? It's a lifestyle. When I met my wife, I said, Jackie, here's the deal. I work for myself, but it's a lifestyle. She's like, okay. And I was like, no. You need to understand what that means. Like, that's, you got to understand what you're getting into. You've been in previous relationships, 5 o'clock, it's time to punch the clock. We're going out for dinner. We're going for drinks. It's like 5 o'clock hits. I still might be doing a call at 6:30, and it might be a text. It might be a phone call at 6:30 with a prospect who's calling me or a client going, hey, can we do this, that, right? Like, it never stops.
Right.
And that's a whole nother piece of it too.
Right.
That I think people don't understand sometimes is it's not the punch in, punch out. It's a constant.
It is a constant. It's going to take a lot of mental capacity when you're always on, right? You're always, functioning, you're thinking about the next thing, it's like, and so you got to train it. We were talking, I was interviewing someone else, and, it was big into fitness, and we were talking about the mind is a muscle, you got to train it that way. We also, you got to train it to recover too. Right. So there's times where it should be engaged and time when it should be off. Right. And I struggle with the off part, and most entrepreneurs struggle with that.
They do. I have 2 little guys at 4.5 and 2.5. So, it's not an easy thing to be able to just turn it off at that point. Right. But I've gotten a lot better at saying, okay, when I walk through that door to the time that we're done with dinner, that period of time for that 2 to 3 hour window is family time. And I turn off my phone. I really don't kind of answer much. And that's my dedicated time with them. Or I pick up my son from school a couple days a week, and that's my interaction with him and my time, and that's when it starts. But then when they're down, I'm not turning on Netflix. I'm not turning on Hulu. Like, all of a sudden, my wife knows, like, she's got her Desperate Housewives on, and I'm on the laptop going, what are we doing tomorrow? How are we prepping for tomorrow? How do I grow this thing for the next 2, 3, 4? Again, it's the 2, 3, 4 hours here, the 2, 3, 4 hours here. You're starting to put a lot more time back in your day. You and I talked about it last night on the boat. Like, you can make the time. It's just how you want to use the time. It's there. It's just you're making that choice.
100%. Yeah, and people look at business owners like, oh, it's really, must be nice. It's on autopilot. It's not. Don't get me wrong. That is the end goal. You hope to get to a point where it is very on autopilot, but it's not. And the amount of businesses that are, in a sense, where you're not involved and you're still the owner is very far and few between. You're still very, very involved. So let's talk about the business, right? And when you guys hear this, it will obviously be weeks and weeks after the fact. But when last night I had the privilege of being a guest out on one of the charters, it was a great time. Thank you again, Justin. So tell me about the business as a whole and the idea behind it.
Yeah, so we were with some friends. They were celebrating their 5-year wedding anniversary on a yacht, and they invited us and another couple. And we get on the yacht, and everybody's ready to party it up. And the gentleman at the time who was the captain, the owner of the boat, was no more than 30. And everybody's like, all right, we're gonna pop open some drinks. And I'm like, I'm going up to the flybridge. I'm gonna talk to this guy, because how do you acquire, a 70-foot yacht? You got to do something. So we really connected pretty quickly there. And I just started kind of learning a little bit about some of the opportunities and challenges here in the Naples market for yachting experiences, right? And so that's kind of what got me thinking about, okay, how do we, is there an opportunity to take essentially what a NetJets concept or a Wheels Up concept or some of these concepts that are out there where they lease these, in that case, the aircrafts, but in our case, lease these yachts from the owners for charter purposes, right? You've got the smaller boats through Freedom and some of the other local businesses here in town. Then you have the larger, Princess, Double Princess, that sort of stuff for the bigger stuff. But there's a market here. And then ultimately, what happened is just like with anything, when I go into it, I know nothing about it. And that's where the challenge is, right? Now it's like, who can I network with?
Right.
It's open game,
Yep.
right? And that is a key too. Like sometimes people think like, okay, I'm going to open up a business in something I know. No, go do it in something you don't know, because you're going to come from a totally different perspective, right? You don't have all the baggage, if you will, of, hey, I know this, I know this, I know the challenge, I know. Sometimes not knowing what the problem is or the challenge is ends up getting you to where the opportunity is, right?
Right.
So I know nothing. I reached out to an individual here in town that is a captain, and I just said, hey, can I get 15 minutes of your time? I've got an idea. And he looked at me after about an hour and a half and said, you've got something here. And I said, okay, great. And then just started putting some pieces together of local business owners here in town. And so really it kind of came together where I said, all right, we're going to create a corporate yacht membership club, make it affordable, where the corporations can come in and they'll be able to entertain prospects, clients, or network with other businesses, and be able to get an actual ROI. And that's really ultimately the concept, right?
Cool. Yeah.
That's kind of what you experienced last night, just getting people together and being able to kind of network. And I think there was a couple people last night that haven't seen each other in a little while, and so it was good for them to kind of say, "Oh, you're with so and so now," you know.
Yeah.
I think it was that was really satisfying.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that you did a great job, and I knew when I first met you that was important to you was the experience, you know. And you are right, and I'll piggyback on it because I've been a part of boating my whole life, and, you know, I do boat and whatnot. And so there's a lot that goes into boating, you know, and everyone talks about that. And it's kind of the running joke. The best day of your life is when you buy a boat. The best day is when you sell it, or whatever it is, right? So anyways, it's like 2 best days, right? But it went back to also too is like, if you're boating, most of the time people are wanting to do that so that they can release energy and pressure and stress and, like, you know, be in a comfortable spot. And when you are captaining it around, or you're driving your own boat, or you got a Freedom Boat Club and you're taking that boat out because they don't come with captains, you know, there is a lot of stress that still goes into it, and pressure and whatnot, that you don't want to, like, mess up, or, you know, heaven forbid, hurt someone or your family or things like that. So again, you made an experience out of something that can be very stressful, and you made it very relaxed. So kudos to you on that one. And then also too, obviously, you know, different charters is different things. You know, we had a chef on board there, and it was really cool to have some food with it too. It was very, very good food and stuff like that. So overall, just top-notch experiences. So
I appreciate it. That's, you know, when like you said, when we first met, my goal was we're not in the charter business, right? We're in the experience business. And I think what, you know, again, credit my wife for this, because she was in the restaurant industry and the events industry. It's all about the details at the end of the day. It's the little things. It's sending out the preference sheets to people beforehand and saying, hey, do you have, you know, do you have any allergies? Do you have any, you know, right? What's your favorite drink? Would you know, little things like, do you want to be called, you know, Mr., Sir, first name, last name, you know, insert whatever you want there, right? Like, you know, but people walked away going, wow, like, this felt like it was theirs, and it wasn't just, oh, come on board, have fun, see the yellow ball go down, and then we all go home, right? And that's the goal that we want to have for every single time we bring people out, is to make it feel like it's their boat, it's their experience, and they can customize it how they see fit for whoever they're going to be bringing out there. Very cool. So.
Now, is it like, so give me a little bit of an example then. So you kind of pretty much buy, in a sense, X amount of charters, and then, you know, depending on the boats available, then you can use them that way. Is that the same thing as kind of Wheels Up, or, you know,
yeah,
Net Jets?
Similar. So the way that I concepted it was, all right, we're gonna be able to buy basically a package of hours. We call them miles, but essentially they're hours out on the water. An initial package comes with 9 hours, and you can choose to use those 9 hours in any which way that you want. So you could do 3 sunsets at 3 hours apiece. You could do, you know, a half day. You could do a full day. Whatever the kind of, you mix and choose what you want to do. One of the things that's come out of it from the members is feedback from different charters saying, hey, we'd love to be able to network with some of the other members that are part of the club. You know, could we say, hey, on this date, we're going to do a charter. Is there anybody else that wants to come? We just split the time. So 3 charters or 9 hours can now become maybe 4 or 5, charters at the end of the day. And so the goal here is to be able to get the owners to get out as many times as they can to promote their businesses to really generate an ROI, right? And so the more times you can get out there, the more faces you see. It's all about the networking, right? It goes back to that. You know, that's the core piece of it.
Yeah. And let's talk about that first. In your experience of network, you said it was so important to take all the meetings, right? Like, this is a different level of networking too. And one of the things I want to comment in on is, golf is so cool and so powerful that you are trapped, right, in a sense, on a course for like 4 hours. You have to get to know that person, right? And so it's the same thing. You can't leave the boat, right? So you're trapped for 3 hours.
You can, but it's gonna, you're gonna
be
get
cold.
exercise in.
Yeah.
Right.
So and the reason I say that is like, you want to be careful on like who you're there, right? You want to make sure you build a relationship, but also too, like, you're going to really get to know people on a deeper level, right? And so if building a relationship is important, these kind of activities you should be very strategic about, right? If it's golf or it's this or whatever, right? You should be very strategic on making sure that you get the ample time to build a connection. And I found that last night. Like, I knew people on it, but I also didn't know everyone, and so I was able to build really good connections. And I feel like I know them very well in a short amount of time. And so when you are a business owner or an entrepreneur or anything like that, and time is of the essence, and you need to build relationships and strong relationships, it's a good way to do it.
Yeah, there's no better way than, when I grew up, I was 13, 14, grew up on the golf course, right? And I'm a product of a public golf course, right? So I'm playing with a 50, 60, 70-year-old individual. For 5 hours, you learn a really great asset, which is you learn how to communicate, right? So you could either not know the person or you can get to know them, right? And so all of a sudden you find this like commonalities, ways to communicate with people, ways to kind of break the ice, right? These are all things that made it very easy in my 20s to go to networking events, to go to different business functions, and I have no issues with, approaching anybody, because at the end of the day, the worst they're going to say is, leave me alone. No, I don't have the time. Right. Okay.
Cool.
Fine.
And it took, 30 seconds of your time to get a no. Okay.
In my last business in payment processing, early days, it was, money was tight. And so we weren't able to go to certain industry conferences. What I did is, plot myself in the lobby of the hotel, and as people were coming out for drinks or bathroom breaks or whatever, look at the tag. Okay, well, that's so-and-so. And they'd come by and say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, here's who I am. This is what we're about. We're a new organization. I'd love to just take 15 minutes when you have a break or a drink after the conference is done. You wouldn't know how many times that led to meetings easily, right, with decision makers who were there. And all it was a simple 10-minute conversation, or just prepping and knowing who's going to be there, who's not going to be there, and being able to take advantage of that, right?
That's a big thing that don't look past, is doing the due diligence, right? You should be analyzing who possibly would be in that room, who the demographic of the networking event might be, the charitable event, whatever it might be, a social gathering. Maybe it's centered around what's happening next weekend or this weekend, Cars on Fifth, right? Okay, well, it's all about cars, maybe you should learn a little bit about cars, right? Like, so it's like finding that group that you probably will interact with, and putting some knowledge and a little bit of investment of your time and energy to do your research.
Yeah, and I think, again, last night, it was very intentional. The week before, we had another charter, and that was a very specific, when I'm looking at putting people together onto the boat, like you're saying, it's 3 hours. We're spending time together, right? And so you have to have certain personalities there. So there are certain people that are there because they can break the ice. They are easy, right? The attorney last night, I like Dave. He's a little quirky, but hey, he can say what he on his mind, and I appreciate that about him.
He's great,
right?
Yep.
And so there are people who are just straight hardcore networkers out there that, they're there and they're good at that, and others who just want to be able to have and enjoy the time. And so when you start looking at it, don't always look at it like, what am I going to get out of it? The best thing you can do is, how can I help that person, right? If you could start out with, I've always tried to kind of start meetings, or if it's new relationships, when somebody calls, it's like, how can I help you? Right? A couple weeks ago when you asked about doing the coverage, it was like, I thought I missed something, signing the piece of paper. I was like, okay, I just missed something there. Right. And you're like, hey, yeah, no problem. What can I do for you? Right. Like that, and it has to be genuine. There can't be an agenda on it. You can't be calling back on, hey, where's the chit here?
Yeah, exactly. You did. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, I should get something in return. No.
Yeah, no.
Just
you
help.
Just do it to do it and don't ask.
Right.
And then when conversation comes, it's like, hey, how are things going? What's happening? Oh, things are going pretty good, but I'm trying to get a hold of this person. I'm trying to do this. Hey, you know what? I might know somebody. And some people's, memories are short and they're self-centered, and that's okay. You're going to run into that. It's just the way, that's business, right? But most people tend to want to help people out.
100%. 100%. And especially too, like, successful individuals. That's why, like, we are so lucky to be in this town, because the amount of successful business owners that are here that want to give back, not financially, but knowledge. They want to either make a connection, or they want to just pour into you that, hey, you're not alone, or, whatever it might be. And it's just really cool that there's, because they've gone through it. They've gone through the trials, tribulations, different things like that, so that, like, help you realize, like, whoa, I'm not alone, right? Or sometimes it's a connection that you're like, hey, well, give this person a call. And you're like, that was a game changer to my business. And it took them 30 seconds of their time. And, that's what I think, we live in such a cool, unique area.
Yeah. And you have to, like, I'm calling out people my age and probably younger. It's easier to say, oh, they don't understand. They're not using this, not using this. No, they have a knowledge base that never goes away, right? Like, they've learned the hard way, and the old school way works. I mean, it does, right? And if you look at it, there's a reason why people are you're seeing increasing in physical mail and postcards and stuff like that coming back, because people are sick of getting texts and emails, right? It's run its course, right? So you're 100% right. Like, this weekend I was at a brunch, and there were some pretty influential people there. And again, they asked, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? And it was just little tidbits. Hey, think about this. Here, think about that. And I take it like a sponge. I'm not sitting there walking away going, yeah, okay, he didn't say yes to me. He's not going to engage. Who cares? Like,
right.
What does he know? This is quite the opposite. It's like, I'm asking, like, okay, why did you do that?
Yeah.
What happened? Was there a learning experience there? Right? And too many times you can have the success and think, oh, it's me, me, me. Don't lose sight of, there are people that can still help you and coach you.
Oh, big time, big time. Yeah. Unfortunately, some entrepreneurs let it get to their head really quickly, right? You need to always, you can be, in a sense, as you get more successful, you can be more reserved. You're going to have to learn to say no, which is very important as an entrepreneur, because we are subject to wanting to start new things and venture out, and shiny object syndrome, right? But you need to be grounded where, like, when you get good nuggets of information, that you need to act upon them. Because if you think, oh, I already know everything, and that can't help me, there's no way this person can help me, well, you probably just missed out on a huge opportunity.
Yeah, and you made a good point around, like, knowing when to kind of truly engage, knowing where your limits are, right? So at what point do you kind of say, okay, I need to back away from this. This is where, the individuals who are working for me can handle this. It's hard to not want to touch it and feel it. And say, this is the way I want to say it, right? You got to let that go as you're growing, because you won't go anywhere, right? And, again, I'll give the tidbit to my wife. Like, she says the same thing to me. She's like, you're the head. Everything starts from the head, right? And so if you are not doing something, then people who are working for you are going to learn from that. If you're showing good behaviors, you're doing things that are reinforcing that culture, that mentality, then you will have a staff that will be able to go out and do it just as well, maybe even better than you, and that frees up your time. That's where you have the time to go, okay, that little shiny object that I thought about 6 months ago, let's revisit that to the business now. How can I put that into play? Right. So
yeah, it's huge. It might not be right now, but you might use it later, which is monstrous. So, Justin, it's been an absolute pleasure. as obviously the host here, I'm a privilege to bring on people like you that have endured through a lot of different things that make you a successful entrepreneur today. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing those things so that people can take some kind of nugget of information back, or they're at that point where they might be in a failing business and, hey, that one might fail, but let's go to the next one and on to the next one until you continuously succeed and whatnot. So I appreciate you sharing your wisdom today. Thank you so much. You got an amazing business. I appreciate you letting me experience in that. And it was a lot of fun. So thanks again for coming on as being a guest.
No, again, thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate it. I mean that at the end of the day. As I said, we take everything. You never know where it can lead to.
Yeah.
And relationships can go. So, and however, if there's anybody that ever wants to reach out, Andrew knows my information. I'm happy to have the 15-minute coffee right?
Oh, yeah.
That's where it starts.
Yeah, all of his information will be below, so you'll be able to check it out. You'll be able to reach out to him and get in contact. If you can't, just let me know. I'll make a connection, of course. And so thank you again. And we're here at Venture X, sponsored by Visions Media. And this is the Regenhard Report. We'll see you guys in the next episode.